Hello and welcome to this edition of the Inside the Channel podcast. I'm your host, Jon Alba from the Channel Company. And joining me today are Paul Spencer from T-Mobile and Howard Holton from GigaOm. And today we're going to explore how T-Mobile is taking a multi-layered approach to transforming businesses with 5G connected laptops. It's great to have you both here with me. Paul, you're out in Chicago right now. Howard, how are you guys doing?
Doing great.
John, great to be here.
Well, let's start here talking a little bit about data protection and connectivity. So, Paul, I want to start with you. Why is now the time for users and partners to consider a switch to a connected laptop?
It's a great question, John, and probably admittedly, we're a little early on the cusp of wide adoption of connected laptops. But there's a huge event that's going on that I'm sure Howard's going to talk about. And I don't mean like a specific event, but Windows 10 retiring, Windows 11 coming in, chipsets doing things that have never been done, adding in a third brain into every laptop that's out there. There's more new laptops coming into the market than any other time really in history. And so the question that I ask customers and I ask partners is, do you think that the world is going to be more or less wirelessly connected in the next 2 to 3 years? And the answer is pretty easy. It's going to be more wirelessly connected. So if that is, and you're making these investments for the next 3, 4, 5 years, do you want to future-proof your business from one perspective? And then the second piece is, what's your security posture? What's your security stance? And how important is that to you? Which I'm sure Howard will get into a bunch of stuff because he and his company have done a mountain of work for us that's been super, super helpful. So,
yeah, I mean, if I can just add on a little bit, I would say I think we're behind, frankly. That's not really news to anyone that's paying attention because the reality is the dynamics of work have changed in the last 5 years, and we're always behind in security. It's an offensive sport, right? So we're always a little bit behind. The big thing that changed, obviously, is COVID, which removed the standard perimeter that made all this stuff okay a little bit before. And instead of protecting 22 networks, if I had 22 locations, I'm now protecting 10,000 networks because I have 10,000 users. And I need to stop thinking about it as though perimeters that no longer exist, and that things are just okay, right? The beauty of 5G is architecturally, security is part of the stack, not an add-on or wrapper to the stack. And that hasn't been possible ever in the past. I know there's a tremendous number of advantages. We could get into those, but that's one that cannot be understated and still have people understand why this is important. Security is part of the 5G spec. It is not an add-on like it was with LTE and 4G and 3G and 2G.
So, Howard, before we do get into those advantages, you mentioned that we are behind the curve when it comes to security measures. So why are proactive security measures more necessary than ever, in your opinion?
I mean, security can't be a passive sport, right? Think of it like baseball, because it is kind of like baseball, right? You, the defender, are the pitcher, right? And the batter is the attacker. If you decide that you're going to be passive, it's cool. There's just a pitching machine there. And they get to hit every single ball. Every single home run causes damage to your organization. So how should you do that? Well, you should do that by fielding the best team you possibly can. Right? Now, you want to have the best shot at it? Throw the fewest amount of pitches. How do we throw the fewest amount of pitches? We make our exposure the smallest possible. Well, if I have 20,000 users and I have 10,000 of them working remote, and 10,000 of them are on a network that I don't control, that I have no visibility in, like their home network, great. I've just thrown 10,000 pitches by however many attempts, right? Some percentage of those networks are absolutely compromised. Why? Because they have an old IoT device sitting on the network that runs the thermostat that's part of a botnet, right? It doesn't mean that they're actively attacking you, that they're actively in your stuff, but they are absolutely compromised.
I'll tell you what, if Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred had his way, there might be extra people on base and you'd be playing a whole lot more defense. So I appreciate your analogy a little more. Let's dig into more of those advantages you were talking about, though, Howard, for 5G for mobile workers using laptops. What are some of those?
Well, I mean, the biggest, easiest one is if 5G is the way that I connect, then I always know what the network is, right? And if you think about the user, the device, the network, and the traffic combined creates a fingerprint, right? And that fingerprint allows me to validate that this is the right user at the right time at the right place with the right traffic. The second I change any of those variables, it's a new fingerprint, which also means I need to address the security in a distinctly different way, right? Okay, cool, fine. I have a VPN. VPN appliances actually quite suck. They're quite terrible. They were okay in like 2000 to 2010 because the number of people that I had working remote were relatively small. And so for the 10 people that would use VPN, it was fine. It did the job, and we really didn't think about blast radius when it came to security. So giving people kind of uninterrupted access to our network, not the hugest thing that we focused on. They likely had unlimited access when they were in the office, and we were really trying to replicate that kind of experience. But from about 2010 to now, VPNs have sucked. They provide way too much access. They provide way too little granularity, and they're a really good attack target. They're a really good attack vector. Because once I get in and own it, I'm in the network, right? So the advantage that I have with 5G is, even if I'm using a VPN, which hopefully we're going to talk about why we don't necessarily want to do that with the T-Mobile solution, right? I control the network end to end. There is no more compromised wireless network in the middle, right? Okay, why couldn't I do that in the past? I couldn't do that in the past because the bandwidth didn't exist, because the latency was entirely too great of traditional mobile networks. Well, 5G changes those things distinctly, right? I don't have it here. I have a 5G device that I routinely get a gig on. Like, that's insane. That's just craziness. My cable modem at home doesn't routinely get a gig, right? Additionally, the network is tunable. This is where it starts to become fun. The network itself has built-in levels of QoS that have never existed before. So the network vendor themselves can carve out what you could think of like a traditional MPLS network, specifically for you, specifically within that 5G network. That effectively creates a tunneled private network just for you, just for your traffic. It's not free, but just for you and just for your traffic. So this starts to look an awful lot more like a corporate private network that's available everywhere that there is air, power, and people to make it worth putting in a tower.
So then, Paul, let me follow up with this and ask you, how does the T-Mobile 5G network differentiate from others in the space?
T-Mobile is very early to 5G. We're admittedly like really late to 4G. Okay, there's a long, like really cool story that we could get into about, hey, what happened after the AT&T merger and all the way through the Sprint merger and all the history between there. But the acquisition of Sprint was a spectrum acquisition. On the surface, it looks like it was really about customers. It was really a spectrum. It was all about spectrum. And that gave us more spectrum than really candidly the other two combined in the space. And so we went on a breakneck pace of building out a standalone 5G network, which is what Howard's describing. But let me just to be really, really clear, because some people heard standalone and they went, not big of a deal. Let me just describe it. So you said I live in Chicago, which I do. The main artery down to downtown Chicago is Highway 88. It's usually about 8 lanes wide, some places 10 lanes wide. It's frequent that there's traffic in Chicago. And in fact, some places it clutches all the way down to 4 lanes because it's an old city and there's old infrastructure. A standalone network is simply like we built a super highway above Highway 88 that nobody on Highway 88 can touch. That's our 5G network, and that's how we architected it. It's why we were able to build an end-to-end network in 36 months that is unlike anything that has ever been seen on this planet, literally. And so you don't have to believe me. You can go look it up in Ookla and Umlaut and other third-party companies that this is what they do. They'll all verify coverage, speed, reliability. T-Mobile wins on all of those metrics. And so that has put us in a position to be able to offer things like a 5G connected laptop that gets speeds like Howard's speaking about and offers a security stance that is always on, that I'm sure we're going to talk just a little bit more as we get into T-SIMsecure and our SASE solution. So that's my sales guy, like elegant way of saying it's not as good as Howard, but that's to me that's the differentiation in our network.
No, that is absolutely the differentiation in the network, right? Like, let's talk about that just for 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. So people need to understand that the way wireless licensing works in the licensed spectrum and certainly within the kind of what we think of as cellular spectrum, is based on a draft. Think of it just like a football draft, right? Who goes first in the football draft? It is not whoever won the Super Bowl, right? And so when the US government is going, hey, we're going to release some new spectrum for the mobile providers to provide more bandwidth, what they do is they go, who is the furthest behind? Well, that's Sprint and T-Mobile. So if we're going to give someone help to compete in this competitive space, we're going to give them first swing at the bandwidth, first swing at the spectrum, first swing at this resource that is gone once licensed. No one else can use it. No one else can sit there. No one else gets the priority of it, right? So yes, T-Mobile absolutely bought some customers with Sprint, and Sprint bought some customers with Nextel. But Sprint bought a tremendous amount of bandwidth availability, licensing from Nextel. It is probably the most valuable intellectual property in the world, is that license, that spectrum. No one else can have it. No one else can use it. It's owned by Nextel, then Sprint, now T-Mobile. And why is that so important? Because 5G is ridiculously complicated. In order to get all the benefits that you need from 5G, you need spectrum to do it in. No one else has it. It just doesn't exist. It's just not there.
So let's get a little more granular here then. Paul, you brought up T-SIMsecure. Let's discuss that. How does it separate itself from the other secure access service edge solutions out there?
Yeah. So Howard kind of talked about it before. And listen, like Howard's done some research for us, so he's by far the expert here. So I'm going to muck this up a little bit. So Howard, you clean it up for me would be super helpful here. But you have all sorts of over-the-top solutions. Howard kind of talked a little bit about VPN, but there's some other like really great security solutions that are out there, and companies offer all those. Those are over the top, and that's a great security posture stance too, by the way. This is integrated with Versa and literally built into the fabric of our 5G network. It is built into the SIM card that you would get sent to put into your laptop. And so the way that I think about it, which Howard did a great job of describing it before, we went from where you had, a 1%, 2% of your workforce that was remote to most of the workforce everybody was remote for a couple of years there. And now we're sort of in this middle stance. And it only takes one. It takes one employee, one user to not do the security protocols that you've asked them to, or something to not work in the sequence of events that needs to happen to be able to make that a secure connection. It takes one Wi-Fi access point. So I think about when I travel, okay? I usually, which is often, but usually if I go to the airport, there could be an access point. I'm on the airplane, there's an access point. I get off the airplane and go to Wi-Fi, there's another access point. I go to a hotel, there's an access point. Maybe I go to a coffee shop, there's an access point. I go to a partner's office, there's 6 already. That's just me. There's thousands of me at T-Mobile going around doing this every day. Since moving, roughly a year ago to a connected laptop, it's an always-on security solution. I don't connect to Wi-Fi, period, at all anymore. It's an always-on solution that's always there. And so it provides a level of security posture to what Howard was saying. It's not a reactive posture stance. It's a proactive posture stance that you'd be taking with T-SIMsecure.
Yeah, I mean, to make it simple, T-SIMsecure is built into the SIM. So if you're connected to the network, you're also connected to the entire security stack. You can't separate the two. You can't go, oh, well, like this doesn't work over VPN, so I'm going to turn my VPN off. Oh, no, I forgot to turn my VPN back on. Right. I'm at reInvent right now. I'm in Vegas at reInvent. Supposedly there are 90,000 people at reInvent this year.
Oh, my goodness.
It's by far the biggest I've been at. Of those 90,000, 89,997 of them brought their laptops, and 3 people forgot it at home. Of those 89,997 people, how many of those do you think connect to a wireless network they shouldn't trust? Remember, this is the home of DEF CON. What are the chances that all 90,000 people, there's not one hacker walking around going, right? Again, T-SIMsecure means that doesn't happen. Walk around with whatever you want, do whatever you want. If my laptop is connected to the network, my laptop is running those security protocols.
So, Howard, what are some of the key security features of T-SIMsecure?
Well, I mean, it starts with kind of basic tunneling, right? Every piece of traffic is encrypted, and it is encrypted for your organization, right? In kind of the same thing that we're searching for VPN. But where it gets really useful and really interesting is we're also running T-Mobile is also running telemetry and creating that kind of profile and creating that fingerprint. Additionally, because it's a modern platform and it is not a VPN, you only get access to the resources that have been provisioned specifically for you for that device. So if we think about things like network access control, right, which was an ability to say your device has to have a certain level of security for it to be authorized on the network, yeah, we got all that, right? You have to be the right user. You have to be authorized. Great, we got that. There's no access to the whole network because we're also just provisioning those things that you have access to, that your company has said, these are the right resources for you to use and how we want you to use them. And all of that is built in and it's seamless for the end user. Again, if your laptop has a network connection, your laptop has the security stack. So there's no more of this, well, I mean, I have Wi-Fi, but I can't get the VPN to work. No. It doesn't work that way. If you have network access, you are connected, the security is in place. And that should give confidence to 360 degrees of the story, right? The organization is confident, the security team is confident, the networking team has what they need, and the customer, the person using it that has to get work done, has what they need, and it is invisible to them. Invisible is the most important.
Paul, simplification of the protection process is a big piece of T-SIMsecure. So how does it help accomplish that?
I think I'll piggyback on what I just said and what Howard just said. Invisible is key. So simplification is a big piece of T-SIMsecure. And then I go to what I said before. It just takes one. Like how your example was great. Yeah, there's probably a couple hackers walking around Vegas this week. But like that's a great example, though. I mean, it literally just takes one. You know, it's never, oh, hey, somebody left the front door open and somebody walked in, hacker walked into the office and that's how it happened. There's some way that they tunneled into the network, and then now you've got depending the size of your company, you've got some significant issues that sit in there. And so simplification is best. I'm a legacy, like old school sales guy. We never want to stop to pause to VPNs have always been the most annoying thing in the world for me. Oh my gosh, I got to do this, I got to do that. And it's super painful. And so the friction, just like anything, you take the friction out of the process, or as Howard says, you make it invisible for people to use. You've got a security posture that you didn't have before. And simplification's it's a big piece of it.
Howard, let me ask you this. How would you overcome the objection of price for a 5G connected laptop?
I don't actually think there's an objection of price. I think there's an assumption of price. But the reality is my job is to enable you to do your job. That's it. I don't have a third function, right? So how do I enable you to do your job? Well, I enable you to do your job by giving you a device that is secure, that reduces the risk to the organization of you doing that job, that is always connected, and that is modern enough that you can get the work done. The fact of the matter is I'm going to replace 20% to 33% of my endpoints every single year, right? Now, if I go traditional, I inherit all of the same risk, and I'm just basically doing a one-for-one. But if I can replace those endpoints and reduce the risk and modernize, right, improve capabilities, because there's nothing like going, I have to pull over on the side of the road because this critical thing just came in and I'm going from meeting 1 to meeting 2. Well, that doesn't do me any good, and I'm pulled over on the side of the road. Well, with a enabled laptop, I'm always able to connect. I never have that, oops, how do I find a wireless hotspot so I can get on, so I can get connected, so I can connect my VPN, so I can get into the thing that I need to fix the thing that someone else is relying on me to do. It's always connected. It's always there. With modern processors, I even get kind of all-day battery life, right? Additionally, there's kind of a subsidy that we can talk about that really lowers that cost, so that while you may have a perception that a 5G laptop is more expensive, Bundle that with service, and the cost goes down. Additionally, I'm paying for VPN. I'm paying for SASE. I'm paying for these other security tools that I also don't need to continue to pay for because it's already built in. It's already part of the service. It's already there.
Paul, you're a natural salesman. Is there anything you want to add on that?
We designed with the channel. So we were very specific. We did a lot of surveys. We did a lot of interviews. We did focus groups with partners and with customers, but mainly with partners. And, billion-dollar SIs and VARs that sell a lot of laptops and have a long history of it. We said, hey, help us go design a program that's channel first, because that's where the sale happens. It's in the channel. People are not calling. People aren't picking up and calling like our sales team, and General Mills isn't calling our sales team. Hey, I'd like 1,500 laptops. Could you send me inspect them out with this? It's not how, I think everybody listening to this knows that's not how it buys. So we wanted to lean into that posture, and we wanted to say, hey, how do we make it easier for the partner in this situation? And so we designed a program called Partner Plus, and that program essentially offsets the upfront cost of what we kind of estimate as the chipset. So it's roughly about a $400 upfront offset of cost when you're signing up with T-Mobile, obviously, service and T-SIMsecure that sits on top of that. So you get all the benefits that Howard was just talking. And if I'm the CFO and I'm trying to make this decision, we basically made it cost neutral for Wi-Fi versus connected from a chipset cost and what the manufacturers are charging. So I agree with Howard. There really is an objection. It's really a security conversation, which is what I love about this conversation. But at the end of the day, somebody does have to write a check. And so we wanted to make it as simple as possible for the VAR to go talk to their customer, for the partner to go talk to their customer and say, hey, look, you're within pennies here. Let's talk about security. It just takes that objection off the table. I'm always a huge fan of let me go solve problems for customers. Let me take objections off the table. Let me help you get to the real conversation that will really help you solve the problem that you're trying to solve for, which I think what Howard's eloquently described is it's a security conversation. So I really wanted the price to be out of the mix, which is what we've done.
Well, we started with a baseball analogy. Let's finish with one. Bring us home, Paul. How can we learn more about all this?
Yeah, thanks. And I'm a huge, huge baseball fan. Go Minnesota Twins. So someday we'll get back to the World Series. No, so anybody listening to this, I'm sure there'll be a link at the bottom of this, but you can go to our T-Mobile Partner Program page. We'll have all of the details that are on there. You can ask for information. We'd be happy to talk to you. We've got a huge sales force that's out there that can go talk to you, and plenty of other partners in the channel that we can connect you with too. So.
I always did prefer Little Big League to Rookie of the Year for what it's worth. Just putting that out there. Paul and Howard, thank you so much for your time here. And for everyone watching at home, tuning into this special edition of the Inside the Channel podcast, I'm your host, Jon Alba. We'll see you next time.